All right, so Miss J's videotaping my demo for YouTube, so I can do the trimming demo also, because I want to put all my YouTube songs. So please don't blurt out any obscenities. Be respectful. Anyway. All right, so drying cabinet. The whole purpose of this cabinet is to make stuff leather hard. Here's the hard part. Usually this is like an overnight turnaround, but since you guys were gone over the weekend, a lot of you put bags over your stuff. And so yesterday I uncovered some of them, and then this morning I uncovered them. Most of these are actually ready to trim today. Sometimes if the pot gets too dry, it'll pop right off the bat. So like mine just popped off naturally. Some of them, like this one here, you're gonna have to undercut again. So if your pot doesn't just come off, you're gonna have to undercut again. And it is kind of difficult to do this. It kind of hurts your hands a little bit. So I recommend doing it like on the table so you can kind of push the bat up against yourself. Wrap the wire up, and if it hurts your hands too much, let me know and I'll help you, because my hands are permanently calloused from doing this all the time. But you just go through and you can undercut your pot again, and so you can take it off the wheel. Now, when your pot is ready to be trimmed, you want it to be leather hard. It shouldn't be sticky. So if your pot is still sticky, then it's not ready to trim, and you're going to have to flip it over for one more night in the leather hard cabinet until it's ready to trim. If it's leather hard, then it's ready to trim, you're good to go. So like this person, right, well actually I'll use my own as an example. So please be careful when you're taking these out that you don't hurt anybody. Some of them I did cover up because they were a little dry. So this one here is mine. So I'm going to trim this. Since I use brown clay, I want to make sure I use brown clay today for trimming. So I have my pots. I'll use my wheel like normal. And then please clean the bat right away. Okay? And so you're going to take the scraper. You can just use this scraper over here also, and scrape that clay off of your bat. And then, since I'm using brown clay, by the way, all of the brown clay recycle is in this bucket. It's going to be mixed recycle, which after we recycle it, it'll be naturally marbled, so it'll be kind of cool. So we'll have like a third clay option later on. And then please, please, please take a big sponge. Sorry, Luke, I'm going to invade your space. Please clean both sides of your bat. Do this before you trim, because students will be like, oh, Hanson, I'll totally clean my bat. And then guess what? I find their bat. Notice I'm cleaning the edge too. And always the bottom. Don't forget the bottom. Nobody likes a dirty bottom. That's kind of funny. All right, and then just a review too, when you're cleaning your bats, just wring out your sponge and just soak up both sides. And that's all you have to do. And then you'll just put it back with the other bats. But notice both sides are clean and the edge is clean, okay? And so then you'll put your bat back and then you're ready to trim. Okay? And so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use brown clay, since this is what I use to make my pot. And you're going to get about a golf ball sized piece of clay. Okay? All right, so then if you guys could gather around, I'll show you kind of how all the trimming stuff works. Okay. All right. We'll get on. So, trimming. The whole purpose of trimming is to not only clean your pot and make it look professional, but it's also to reduce weight. And so if your pot is really heavy on the bottom, you can dig out some of this clay and you can make it lighter. You can also make what's called a foot. All the trimming directions are up there above the cabinets. So if you forget something, you can definitely look up there. And the reason that there's rings on the wheel is so that you can center the clay on the wheel. So don't use a bat for this. You just put it directly on the wheel head. Okay? We do have this toolbox of trimming tools. Okay? We have larger tools on the bottom. They're ribbon tools. We do have a various assortment of smaller tools. These do need to stay in the pottery, in the trimming toolbox though, because they're newer and they're sharper. And we have different sizes and shapes depending on what you're going for. So usually what I do is I choose the one that has kind of a bigger loop. And then I'll choose one that's a little more detailed, because I actually make lines on the bottom of my pot. So I'll show you how I do that too. Oh, that's the same tool, sorry. I'm going to use one that has more of a ball shape. I like this one that's kind of like a circular ball on the bottom. So I'm going to use those three. And then again, this just stays up on the table up here. When you're done at the end of the period, please do not clean the tools with water, because we don't want them to get moldy in here. So you can just take, at the end when you have chunky clay, you can even just take your smoothing tool and just pick the clay chunks out of it and just put it back. And then every once in a while we'll clean them all, okay? But that way they don't get gross. We don't want them to rust either. So, all right. So what we're gonna do, the most important part is centering the clay on the wheel. So you can kind of use the circles that are already on the wheel to try to get it in the circle that is as close to the size of the pot as possible. You're gonna switch on your wheel, make sure that your foot is on the pedal and that it is in the down position. Because I've had students that turn their wheel on and their pedal's actually down and the pot goes boop, 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 and it's gone. That'll happen to at least one of you, okay? So make sure your pedal is down, then switch on your wheel. And then I can slowly spin it. I forgot this one has the opposite. So I can slowly spin it to see if it's center. And so this is a hard part. There's like, if you look on YouTube, there's tons of different tips and tricks that people use. Some people do tap centering. I just eyeball it. Or I'll kind of put my finger here, and as it's spinning, you can see it gets closer or farther away to my finger. So usually I try to stop it when it's farther away from my finger and try to just push it closer until I get it just right. And you want the bottom to be center because that's the part that you're gonna dig into. So you want this part to try to be a center. That's pretty darn close. So I'm not going full speed, just enough that I can see the wiggle. It's wiggling a tiny bit, but down here it's pretty center. So I'm gonna keep it like that. And then I'm gonna take my golf ball of clay, and I'm gonna break it up into 4 pieces. Okay? And these are gonna be the wads that hold my clay on the wheel. So I'm gonna roll them into little cat turds. Okay, and if you have a cat, they look like cat turds. The teacher that taught me called them cocktail weenies. You know, like the little smokies. Anyway. All right, so I have my little cocktail weenie cat turds, and I'm going to bend them slightly, and I'm just going to set them next to the pot. I'm not gonna push them on the pot yet. I'm just gonna bend them. I'm gonna push down 2 at a time, but I'm gonna go straight down to the wheel. Do not push into your pot because you could cave in the rim. You don't want that to happen. You wanna push directly down so they kind of smush up against the pot. Okay, and I'm gonna do 2 at a time, 1 thumbprint. Why do I do 2 at a time and not 1 at a time?
So you don't push it over.
Exactly. If I do 2 at a time, then like if I just did 1, I could accidentally scoop the pot and I'd have to recenter it, right? I'm gonna turn the wheel by hand. I'm gonna do the other 2, 1 thumbprint. Then, still doing them across from each other, I can push them down farther, closer to the pot. Now, I will tell you, we got a new piece of equipment called a Giffen grip that self-centers your pottery on the wheel when you trim. It's really nice, but you have to learn the hard way before you use that equipment, okay? Promise? Okay. All right, so now that it's on the wheel, I can go full speed now, okay? But, you don't have to go full speed if it's intimidating. When you trim, still, you always want to use 2 hands. Every time you do stuff on the pottery wheel, it's always good to use 2 hands. Keep your elbows anchored on your legs so that you have a lot of control. And usually I like hold my trimming tool upside down and put my other hand on top so it's nice and tight, okay? First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take care of the bottom. So notice I'm holding my tool really tight. I'm going from the middle to 3 o'clock. And again, on a clock, the 3, here. So I'm gonna start at the middle, and I'm just going to clean up just the bottom of the pot with the big tool. And all I'm doing right now is flattening the bottom of the pot. So I'm just cleaning it up, holding my tool really tight. Okay, now, I don't like to use this tool for the side because this tool grabs a lot of clay, and sometimes what can happen is it grabs too much and it can pull my pot off the wheel. So I like to get the clay off the tool, and then this is where I switch to a smaller tool. This one I kind of hold like a pencil, but still I hold my hands together so they're nice and tight. I actually kind of hold my hands like this, and this is where I'm going to start to clean up the edge of the pot. And sometimes I hold them like this too. So at 3 o'clock, you don't want to go this way because you're pushing against the spin of the wheel. So you want to be on the other side. And I'm just going to very gently start to clean up that surface. I'm rolling that tool over. And already it's starting to look cleaner, right? And so you guys can kind of decide when you're trimming too, like what kind of shape you're going for on your pot. Trimming is my absolute favorite part of the whole process. I love the whole carving aspect of it. And I like to get a little creative with mine too. And so what I'll do is I like to do kind of some hard angles. So I'm actually going to make this a little sharper. And then I can come in with this tool too and just very lightly clean that up. I like to make it a nice hard edge. And notice I'm holding my tool really tight too, trying to keep it as precise as I can. And now if you guys want to, you can keep your pot like this. You can actually trim it on the side too if you want to. I'm having some issues here in the bottom that's wiggling a little bit, so I'm gonna try to muscle it a little bit and see if I can make it more center. There we go, I like that. Okay, so then you can also clean up the edges too. So you can take your tool on the side if you want to and roll it over. It's really up to you. I kind of like it's kind of like a little UFO thing going on here at the bottom. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a foot. So you guys can keep it flat on the bottom if you want to. I'm going to dig in and add a foot. So sometimes people accidentally go through the bottom of them, so you need to know how thick it is. So that's why when you're throwing it, it's always good to kind of know how thick it is. I'm gonna make a little foot on the bottom. If you accidentally go through the bottom, then it's a nice flower pot, right? All right, so I'm gonna take this tool that's kind of shaped like a triangle, and I'm gonna make a little moat. So pretend there's a little castle in the middle. I'm gonna make a little moat. So at 3 o'clock, and then I'm gonna turn into that little circular ball shape, and just very slowly from 3 o'clock to the middle, I'm gonna very slowly remove that clay from the outside to the inside. I'm gonna do it one more time. You can kind of blow the trimmings out of there too. This is why you don't want to do this when the clay is bone dry, because you're gonna breathe in all that dust. That really blows. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna clean up the inside. During COVID, it was really hard because I had my mask on and I would try to blow trimmings out. And so also, oh, careful of that. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to dig in a little deeper. I wanna make my foot a little more pronounced. So I'm gonna dive in a little bit farther. See, I like that. I think that looks nice and clean. All right, so biggest thing when you're done trimming is you want your pots to be clean. You don't want to have a lot of crumbs in there. So this is where I kind of blow them out, take my finger, try to feel and see if I've got any cracks going on in there. Try to make it nice and clean. It's kind of hard to get them detailed. All right, and I really like that. I think that looks nice. So the biggest test too is like if you want to see if your foot is deep enough, you can always use a tool that's completely flat, like your smoothing tool. You can lay it over the edge, and you can actually look underneath and make sure that the inside of the foot is not touching the tool. And that's because, remember, you can glaze the inside of your feet. So if you want your stuff to be really professional, that's what you can do, okay? All right, so now last step. I'm gonna take my rubber rib, and this is why on the wheel I have the rubber ribs that are more sharp on the side, is so that you can clean up your leather heart. So I want you guys to see, you can kind of see my texture in here. Now if I take the rubber rib, make sure the rubber rib is clean, and I just compress it against the clay, you're gonna see that smoothness come out. And you're almost burnishing the clay, which is making it smoother. You see the difference in texture? It looks a lot cleaner. And so this again is why we have the square ribs, so you can get right up in that foot and you can clean it up and you can make it nice and smooth. Because remember, you don't want to assault anybody with your pottery. Turn it to me nice and... Aha! That was good. Try not to throw your tool. This is the second time I've done that now. You let go of your tool, it goes flying. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. So usually I like to run my finger over one more time just to make sure there's no crumbs. And then what you can do is you can just very lightly take the wads off and pull your pot up off the wheel. So then I have my finished pot. This is actually called a you-know-me, which is a ancient, like a Japanese style where it's small on the bottom and wide on top. And then what I always do too is sometimes you're gonna get marks on the side. I like to take the rubber rib and just go over once on the top just to kind of, if I made any marks on it with the wads or anything like that, make sure it's nice and clean. Okay, especially your rim too. You know, don't forget, this is the most important part that people forget about, is to go over your pot one more time and make sure there's no imperfections. You want your stuff to look really nice, okay? All right, so now follow me. I'm gonna show you how to put your stamp in your pottery. Okay, so to put your stamp in your pottery, you take your stamp, hold it tight in your hand, make sure that wherever you're pressing the stamp, you're pressing on the other side. So you're gonna take your stamp, you're gonna press it into your pottery, and you're gonna kind of roll the stamp as you do this. You don't just wanna push it because then you'll cave in your pot. So you wanna kind of roll it back and forth. and then you have your stamp. So then I usually on the inside, I kind of press and kind of, you know, compress on the other side to make sure that it didn't cave in. And then you have your finished pot. So that's trimming.